Have you ever wondered if it's possible to live in sync with your cycle? Do you struggle with a negative mindset around your period? Are you wondering if it's possible to be feminist and anti-birth control? We're going to explore these questions and so much more in the Managing Your Fertility podcast, because this is about helping you live a whole and full life. I'm your host and guide, Bridget Busacker, joining you in this journey of exploration related to women's healthcare, feminism, and fertility awareness. Are you ready? Let's get started. Hi, Sarah. Welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you on today.
Hi, thank you. I'm so excited to be with you today.
So before we jump in, I'm going to do some introductions here. Sarah Rooney is a wife, mother, and entrepreneur with a passion for helping women and families. With all of her own infertility and cycle issues and her heart for authentic women's health, she has been helping hundreds of women and couples as a fertility care practitioner and women's health educator for over 10 years. Seeing how much our mindset and self-image are key to our health and wholeness, Sarah has been also guiding women as a women's school strategist in their transformation to becoming who they are called to be, with the tools to live the best versions of themselves. Sarah, I am so excited for today's conversation, and I just want us to jump in a little bit more and tell us about who you are and how you became passionate about women's health, because your background is incredible in hearing this intro, and I just want to know more.
Yes, thank you. So I have had messed up cycles most of my life, and I now can see how all the stuff I've gone through, and I don't want to call it junk because it's not, it's experiences and it's learning and it's all the different things so that I could become a better servant in a good way, right, to women, because I've been through a lot of it. So, from experiencing PMS and being in college in engineering class and having this conversation in my head thinking, okay, I don't want to pass out from the amount of horrid cramps I have, but I have to tell my guy friends, if I do, I'm not contagious. I just need to get home. But help me. Why did I think that was an okay conversation to have in my head? that was not somehow abnormal. But having just so many kind of massive cycle issues, not really having any answers. I knew I didn't want anything artificial or any kind of pill. I already kind of knew that wasn't going to help me at all. To fast forward through kind of figuring some things out. Also my health issues, lots of chronic health issues, getting help with those that then helped some of my cycle issues, working on my hormonal balance, to getting engaged, realizing, I really want some form of natural way to plan our family, and ended up taking an introductory session with Crate and Model and realized at the age of 28, why didn't I know this like 10 plus years ago? This would have been super helpful in understanding why I had messed up cycles, what was going on. So all that kind of combined to start bringing in, the calling that I had, because I always was playing teacher when I was a kid, right? That was my role. I was in charge. I was the teacher, but I never taught about mucus. That was never like part of my classroom experience as a child. But really stepping into, women need to know this. Like that was the calling ahead, is women need to know this. Whatever they do with it, that's their choice, but women need to know this. So taking that, kind of starting that journey, and then experiencing, after marriage, infertility, that cyclical trauma of infertility, and my self-esteem and self-worth just taking a massive dive, because how much as women, and this is what we'll get into more, but as we talk, but how much as women we connect to what we do and how we perform, and just instead of innately our own God-given dignity as our worth, how much we connect to everything else. So all that I journeyed with primary and secondary infertility and postpartum anxiety, massive anxiety, all of that, just the amount of kind of lows and challenges I had with my mindset through all of that. really led me to not only be teaching fertility care, right? Not only teaching this and helping women understand there is hope and there are answers. And there is so much that we can share just in terms of, yeah, you can figure out what's wrong. We don't have to live with that. You don't have to live like that. That's not normal. There's a way to help. That's a sign, and that's the biggest thing is all of these things, all these issues we have, they're all signs that our body needs help. It does not mean we're broken. It is a sign that something's out of balance. And so that's kind of really what I want to share is that our fertility is a gift. And what percentage of women do you think actually think that? On both sides, right? When it doesn't work, it's so frustrating. When it overworks, right? When you're super fertile, it's super frustrating. When things are going wrong with your cycles, it just periods are kind of a curse to some women, right? They just think, oh, great, here we go again. And sometimes they're just flat out debilitating. So all that has just been coming together, and God's leading me closer and closer to this passion to just share with women. It doesn't have to be like this. You can have an amazing, peaceful period. You can have balanced hormones. You can have a cycle, no matter what it looks like, whether it needs help or not, that you understand. And you can think awesomely of your fertility. Our fertility is a superpower. It really is. Like, we got extra powers.
I love it.
And we need to use them.
I love that. Okay, so this is amazing. And with all of your story and just like uncovering and learning about your body, I heard you mention a couple of things with, really taking those introductory classes and getting into it at the age of 28, and also that you have a background in engineering. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so did your work in engineer, okay, this is like a two-part question, so here we go.
Mm-hmm.
Did your work in engineering set you up to really embrace natural family planning, fertility awareness, because you saw how the science and the data worked? And then, were you already aware and using fertility awareness in this journey of discovery and uncovering your body and how it works? Or was it really trial and error and not realizing, oh my gosh, there are actually like methods and doctors behind all of this?
So yeah, I didn't really understand any kind of natural family planning really. I knew like a concept of it. I knew it existed, but I wasn't tracking anything in college or no. So my engineering, yeah, great question. My engineering background really set the stage for, oh wow, there's this whole, once I saw it, I was like, oh my gosh, there's a whole tracking and statistical method where you can understand what's happening. You can observe, right? It's total science. You can observe, you can track, you can see markers of how things change. And the whole idea is the charting that we do with Creighton and with other great modern methods as well is such a reflection of what is going on underneath inside. It is literally a window to our fertility. So just charting and tracking can open up so much understanding. And of course, using an instructor is supremely helpful because they understand what's going on. They can see the patterns, right? And as you learn and grow. But yeah, that whole idea of just the way my brain works is very much analytical and understanding that there was a reason behind all the craziness. And we just had to uncover it. It was just like an experiment. We had to figure out what was wrong. But until I started charting, we didn't have that gateway. There wasn't really a way to understand it to then get the help I needed.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I partly asked because my husband, being an engineer and a convert, he was really fascinated by the data because he had grown up thinking, like, oh my gosh, like the rhythm method and this crazy thing that Catholics do, and didn't realize that it wasn't something that was specific to Catholics, that, this went beyond the Catholic Church, and that the research and the data there was for truly any woman. And so when he
Yes.
started to look at that, he was like, this is unreal. Like, this
Mhm.
actually works. And just seeing people's stories and things like that, he was like, what? So
Mhm.
because his brain worked in that same analytical way, and
Yeah.
obviously still does. So that's just neat to see how even just your background and understanding really helped you to
Mhm.
get into the data and the specifics of charting and seeing like, okay, this is
Yeah.
insane how this works so beautifully. So can you
Yeah.
tell us, before we get into our topic of the day, can you
Mhm.
tell us a bit more about Family Wellness Inspired and the coaching you do too?
Yes. So I do one-on-one coaching with fertility awareness, so with the Creighton method. And then I also lead groups and private coaching for the women's school. So, and I'll get more into that and how that comes together. But I love working, especially with couples, but with women, because that I have a heart for women, and I just have a heart for women. But at the same time, I am lit up in the best way in hearing women's dreams and seeing their transformation. I could be exhausted and just, I mean, I love seeing women really grasp into their dreams and kind of letting go of all the extras and really becoming the best versions of themselves. It's all about becoming. Our journey
Mm.
ends later, but it's the whole time here. We are always becoming, learning. It's not about this was a failure, this is a learning. And so being able to transform myself and be able to actually say that where I wasn't there, some time ago, but and then to be able to pass that on and guide and journey with women. That's really what I do. I just journey with. I'm helping women gain confidence, learning the truth of their own fertility, and realizing what a superpower that is, and how much seeing everything, seeing our womanhood through the lens of positive, view of fertility,
Mm-hmm.
like just opens up. Like, that's girl power right there. Like anything that's modern feminist stuff, it's a lot of destruction and not healthy stuff. The understanding our fertility and the gift that it is, and then how we can use it for good. That doesn't mean have 20 babies. That means we can understand where we are. We can understand our cycles and how the patterns of energy happen, right? Or just flat out like, I'm tired before my period starts, and hey, I feel a ton better around ovulation. Did we even know that existed, right? And hey, I can actually exercise differently. I can give myself a little more time to rest when it starts my period, and I don't feel bad about that. I mean, that unleashes such an amazing gift to ourselves, and then we can show up better for the world.
That's so great. Okay, so this is all tying in, and I'm really excited to talk about period positivity because there's
Mm-hmm.
so much negativity around our periods and menstruation, like what you were saying,
Mm-hmm.
just in how we view our bodies, and when we don't have that knowledge and that understanding, it can be really hard to see the goodness in our bodies. And
Yes.
I mean, this like negativity really seems to lead into how we think about our reproductive health, motherhood, our bodies. And I think, I see a lot of artwork around periods and wanting to move in the direction of period positivity, but it almost seems like it's missing the mark. It's the
Mm-hmm.
same with like the vagina monologues
Mm-hmm.
and looking and seeing how, in these expressions of art, while intended to explore and be a space for goodness, it can almost seem um like it's not reverencing the body and seeing the
Right.
goodness of it. So let's
Right.
talk about this more. Like, first of all, what is period positivity, or what is this idea behind it?
Yeah. No, you summarized it so well. I think even the artwork around it's kind of like when the people are trying to express themselves, but they end up shocking people instead of inspiring awe.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That's what it truly is. We are awesome creations, truly, each and every one of us. So when we have this whole kind of system, right? We have male and female both have reproductive systems, but when we have our system and that we look at it as a pain in the bum, right? Like, oh geez, or even like the start of a period, right? Like I remember I got my period and I happened to be sick or something at home from school, and I got my period, and I was crying. I was like, oh no, what is this? I mean, I had some vague idea what's going on. My mom's like, oh, you're a woman now, and I was like, I don't want to be.
Yeah.
This stinks. What is this? And I just remember thinking, I don't like this, because I don't know that she shared all the details, or maybe I just didn't care at the time or something. But how we set up, I'm telling my girls about, and they're little, about my red flow and my white flow, and they kind of half get it and walk away and whatever. But it's all just, this is normal. This is, well, and I keep it very much, obviously I teach it, so I keep it very age appropriate. But they're curious. Why not? They're girls. They're going to be women. They're going to be experiencing this. Why should I hide that? Why should that be something, I shouldn't be ashamed of it. I don't have to flaunt it or like make it, shocking for some reason. But so that whole idea, it starts, early, but that's from our moms. But then what kind of experience did they have? Nobody probably talked to them about it either. Right. And so this idea that we can view our periods in a good way. It is a natural part of our bodies and our systems. Now, the hard part is, culturally it's viewed very negatively. Like look at all the commercials praising this like depot, which only makes you have a period maybe 4 times a year.
Mm-hmm.
That is not natural. That is messed up. But yet somehow we're trying to escape this thing. It's become this thing that is bad. Well, why? Like, it's a superpower that makes human life. Like, that's awesome. So how is it that we've culturally accepted, but a lot of it is kind of the birth control culture. And, well, you don't have to have it. You can have this, but it's counterfeit, right? It's become counterfeit. It's not a real cycle, not a real period. Your body gets tricked into thinking it's in menopause. Why would you want that when you're in like a teenager? That's not a happy place to be. So all of these pieces factor in. And then now legitimately, then there's really tough issues like endometriosis or massive period cramps, extreme heavy periods, very irregular periods. You've got all these issues where girls, women don't know what to do. They need a solution. They go to the doctor, and what does the basically mainstream doctor have? Only one solution: the pill. And then there's sometimes such debilitating cycles and periods. They need some answer to survive. They can't be throwing up or in a bed 5 days out of every month. That just isn't logistically feasible, right? They have to be able to function. So then they're only giving this option. Well, then maybe they have bad side effects from it. And it all becomes very negative because we've got cycles that need help. And then you're viewing it negatively then, because it is a big problem when you're debilitated by your period, right?
Right.
But at the same time, you've got most mainstream doctors telling you, well, this is your only answer, or or if you don't want that, well, good luck. Well,
Yeah,
then what do you do?
Yeah, as you're saying all this, I'm thinking like, was there, because it makes sense, like, with someone who is experiencing debilitating periods to really, it's hard not to think negatively because it's
Yeah.
just so hard every month if you're, like
Mhm.
you said, debilitated and, laying on the couch like 5 days out of every month and trying to take medication and just in pain.
Mhm.
But beyond that, for women, who maybe experience, it's uncomfortable, but it's not so
Yeah.
debilitating. Was there ever a time where we weren't negative towards periods? Or are there certain cultures that celebrate or respect periods? I think I've heard stories around that, but to be honest, I don't really know. And my thought is, just as you're saying, like, if our moms weren't talked positively about their periods,
Mhm.
okay, well, we're our grandmas, and and it's just with the elements of privacy and just how we look at the woman's body just historically. I don't
Mhm.
know. I don't know. Like, did we
Yeah.
ever see periods as a positive thing, or was it just a really embarrassing thing that you weren't supposed to talk about?
Mhm. So good, awesome question. So I will give you the details on this, but this book called Seeing Red by Kirsten Karchmer, she does the brazen formulas for, it's really more herbal and Eastern, Western medicine kind of connected. Awesome woman. She has this book, and it has the history of the period. And I was reading this. I was astounded. I mean, we've had centuries, right, of negative conditioning. Even in the Bible, you like had to go somewhere else because it was unclean, right? Like, so whether maybe that's what they entirely meant or not, right? We have to watch how we interpret things, of course, but um, there's so much, sadly, negativity around and in the history of women. Now, there's, the whole red tent idea, but why did they need to be separated? Why couldn't, right? Like there's, um, I'll share a couple things about from the history. So I loved her little bit of a quote from her book. Is despite the fact that women have been menstruating since the beginning of human evolution, there's very little documentation about women's periods in ancient times, right? So she couldn't find any reference in Chinese medicine texts, and you'd think they would have they were way more understanding of all things before anything else. Even early civilizations, right? Nothing much. And then, so why not? Why wasn't anything? I mean, this is half the per se population of humanity, right? And then it goes on like through the Bible, even the saints, again, not all of them, of course, but there was a lot. Aristotle, right? Says the female is deficient, they're inferior because they menstruate. What? 1878, right? Like this isn't that long ago. This is I was reading this book just dying laughing and flabbergasted. Like letters to the British Medical Journal claim that menstruating women would cause bacon to putrefy.
Oh my gosh. Get out of here.
What?
All of these I'm like, don't yell, but I'm like, that one's got me. That's ridiculous.
I know, it's insane. Like it's crazy, but like it's crazy to us now, but we don't even understand. I mean, mainstream I'd say doctors would say, well, it's possible. I don't think they know a whole lot more.
Yeah, right.
The funny thing is, even like, managing periods, like, so I guess Egyptians came up with the first kind of like tampon, right? So they made out of papyrus, right? That can't have been very uncomfortable. But Victorian England, okay, not that long ago, they just decided, well, that's ridiculous. We have a lot of skirts. Who cares, right? So just, and finally in World War I, literally in the last century, right? And the French nurses got the great idea of making pads out of wood pulp bandages. Okay, she's like, I love this, her humor in this book. At last, I'm not sure why it took so long for the whole world to figure that one out. So finally, like really, it hasn't even been 100 years of like, women figured it out. Like they just dealt with it, obviously. But it's centuries of conditioning, right? Why don't we talk about this? Why have we, she did studies, and 80% of women in the world have some sort of menstrual or cycle issues. 80%. That's an epidemic right there. But are we even talking about it? No. We're telling them, oh, good luck. That's just how it is. Oh, brown bleeding's normal. I'm sorry. No, it's not. Where did you get your medical degree? Because it's not. But again, that cultural, and then we've got the whole piece of birth control is just, it doesn't solve anything. It's just I'm sure I know you talked about it in your podcast before, but it doesn't solve anything. It just covers up stuff. It shuts down the system. That's not an answer. And so how do we move forward positively when such a historical conditioning says, oh my, you must suffer in silence. This is awkward. Don't talk about it. Like, I'm sorry, we're half the population. Like, it's time, we
need to figure this out.
Yeah, we don't have to be shocking, we be rude or disrespectful, but
right.
Hello, this is women's health. This is women's health.
Well, and your point to say, if we've been hush hush for centuries,
yeah.
And just thinking, or having doctors think like, we're lesser than because we have periods. Mm-hmm. And I mean, you see that too, just like in historical films, you're like, oh, that's not real. I hope that's not real, but it is, unfortunately, so it's just, the fact that we are, we're wondering, oh, how do women not know this? It's like, well, obviously, because we've for years, for centuries, like we haven't cared. it hasn't
Right.
been something to talk about. So this is new. This is a brand
Right.
new in some respects, because we're actually acknowledging, oh, women bleed every month. Oh, brown bleeding, let's talk about that. Oh, hormones, let's talk
Yeah.
about it. Oh, cervical mucus. And I think, just hearing what you're saying, it's like, okay, this makes a little more sense why we have somewhat of a
Hmm.
shock value when we hear these things. Like, ooh, why are we talking about this? I mean, it doesn't
Yeah.
matter. It's like, it's not like this is coming up. I mean, I don't know, in our house it does over the dinner table. This is even with a friend at coffee, and it's like this this discomfort and the uncomfortable moment. It's like, okay, but we're women and we should be able to talk about this with each
Yes.
other. In
Right.
mixed company, I understand like that can be an even larger discomfort to navigate, but really,
Hmm.
especially for women not to feel comfortable to
Yeah.
talk to each other about that. And that's something that
Right.
I've experienced where it's just like, can I say that? Is that okay to
Right.
talk about? Because it totally depends
Yeah.
on, at a more micro level, like how you're raised in your community. What was
Right.
that like? Did your mom talk about it or not? Did your sisters talk about it?
Right.
Was it that hush hush topic, or was it, maybe it was more neutral? And
Hmm.
it just blows my mind because it's like,
Hmm.
wow, no wonder we are struggling. And so many women, when
Yeah.
they learn about fertility awareness, they're thinking, how did I not know this sooner? And that frustration, because
Right.
I find it's often met with either that frustration or sadness, but more often it seems to
Yeah.
be frustration, maybe mingled
Right.
with some sadness too. Like, this would have helped me so much, but it's just like,
Right.
how was this information withheld from me?
Right. This should be health class in high school, and it's definitely
Yeah.
not.
Oh my gosh,
Definitely
no.
not.
I ended up doing my health class online because I was just like, Mom,
Mm.
like we're there's I don't this is not going to help me. Like, I'm not learning anything new. It
Right.
wasn't like I was learning something that I hadn't
Mhm.
already been told about and taught. I mean, thank goodness,
Yeah.
that my parents were willing to have these conversations, but it was really my mom who taught me that my period was okay, and really trying to have
Yeah.
conversations, even just with cervical mucus. She would say, like, with like the rains and how it helps the ground be fertile to grow. That's like your cervical
Yes.
mucus. And I remember just being at first being like,
That's
huh?
awesome.
Okay, that's weird. And yeah, now I'm like, that's so awesome because as
Yeah.
as she kept saying it, it was just like osmosis. It was
Right.
like, oh, that's why I've got wetness in my underwear. Oh. So it
Yes.
just had those
Right.
moments to click, but it was like, well, I
Hmm.
wasn't getting it in school.
Right.
And if my mom wasn't talking about it, I have no idea where I'd have learned it, because it wasn't like I had friends
Right.
who knew, maybe, you
They
had
didn't
one
talk about
friend,
it.
yeah, who had like a mom talking about it too, but you still didn't talk about it. I mean, I didn't talk about it in high
Right.
school unless it was hush
Yeah.
hush. And then in college, when femtech came around, it was like, oh, this is so cool. I'm going to see if a couple girlfriends want to do this. And that's what allowed us to have more honest conversations and ask each other questions, but it still
Yeah.
brought like a blush to the cheeks. And
Yeah.
it was like, is this normal? And yet, you can watch
Mhm.
a movie with raunchy sex jokes in it, and it's like, ha ha ha, and you can make the jokes, but
Right.
at the end of the day, you can't have an honest conversation about your
Yeah.
body and how it
Right.
works, and how your fertility and your reproductive health and your period impact sex. It's just such a
Yes.
disconnect.
Yes, exactly. And that's so why um like everything collided for me after starting to take the women's school course and just understanding self-worth so much more deeply. And I was going to give a talk at my daughter's school to the junior high about just how our bodies work, and because who knows these things, right? No one's necessarily teaching this. And I remember thinking, like, if they don't actually believe they're worth it, why would they tell a guy no? If they don't
Yes.
believe or understand how their bodies work, well, okay, sure. Or maybe I must feel more loving this week. No, that's called ovulation. It's a
Yeah, right.
biological process. Stop now. Right? Like, why do we teach that? You're going to feel more like it when you're ovulating. It's called design of life, right? You're going to feel like a failure completely if you got a C on a test before your period, but it's not the
Yeah.
end of the world. It's because your hormones are shifting, and that's normal. So zoom back out a little bit and realize it's okay. And that's harder for, like, junior high and high school and fluctuating a lot of hormones. But if we actually taught this early and said, this is how your body works, this is science, actually. And however you use it later in life, okay, fine, you don't have to teach all that stuff, every piece of it. But to not teach women from the start how your body actually works is a travesty. That's why there's body negativity and period negativity, because we don't understand it. We don't understand something, it becomes like a mystery and it's challenging, and why is this hard, and I don't understand why this happens and what's even happening in my body, and why, why do I feel horrible this week and awesome this week, and why are sports harder this week, and I nailed every shot I took these weeks. And but if you have no connection, and then the biggest disconnect you just said, sex equals babies, but not every time.
Mm-hmm.
That's also a massive myth, which again gives the other side of negativity to the whole thing, this fear of our fertility, right? You fear what you don't understand. So if you don't understand how your body works and you're really only fertile roughly a week or so, I mean, if you have issues, it might extend a little longer and you got to, can work with that. But you really at the, roughly a week of real fertility, not that you go do whatever you want other times, that's not the point of it, but that you understand how to work. And once you understand your fertility, I believe that is very tied to our self-worth. And then you can say, hey, I understand how my body works, and I'm not really ready to use it for life. So, nope, thank you. If you loved me, you'd wait, because I do understand how my body works, and I don't need to shut it off to be loved by you.
Oh, yeah.
Why do we as women, that's the biggest beef I have with feminism. Why do we have to shut our systems off and to be like men? I don't want, men are awesome. I love my husband. I love manly men, right? Like, who are ultimately respectful of women. Why don't we teach men a very basic version of how a woman's body works? That is where we see human dignity. Why don't we teach women, your dress and your attitude and your words greatly affect men? Understand your power. You have massive power. Your pheromones coming off when you aren't on the pill are extremely, right? Men, all these pieces that if you just could help share all those pieces, I think women would just say, oh man, I am awesome. I don't have to change my actual body makeup and shut down a system to function in this world.
Everything
I
that you're
can
saying,
work with
yeah,
my body.
is just
Mm-hmm.
making me think the just total disassociation that we have. Just even the point that you said
Yeah.
of 1 week I feel great, the next I feel terrible, sports are going well, they're not going
Yeah.
well. And how often
Mm-hmm.
are we associating that, and not to broad stroke it with mental health, but to think there's got to be something wrong. I must have something
Right.
going on with my mental health, that I'm fluctuating in emotions, when it's like, okay, well, hold on. There's a possibility that that's a part of your story, but are you also identifying the different hormones and the hormonal fluctuations you're going through? Because maybe you have crazy surges of different hormones that actually need to be regulated, because that fluctuation, that range is normal for women to experience. But when it's feeling erratic or just totally volatile for you, it's like, that's actually a sign there's something deeper going on with your body.
Right.
and
Exactly.
and just recognizing too, I think with what you were saying, I'm thinking about the body positivity movement,
Mm-hmm.
and just how when we're disassociated from our bodies and we're trying to shut down certain parts of our bodies to be loved, it's impacting body image, it's impacting how we see
Yes.
ourselves, if we're beautiful or not. And you had mentioned, the makeup of our bodies, and I'm thinking, man, it's even going to impact why you put on makeup, because
Mm-hmm.
if you're so
Yeah.
disassociated from who you are and
Yeah.
recognizing the power that you have, like you said, like fertility is that superpower,
Mm-hmm.
you don't understand what's going on. You're disconnected from your body.
Mm-hmm.
You're just kind of living. It's like you're just living in your body instead of really experiencing, who am I and what do I do? What do I have to offer? What's going
Yes.
on? What's my worth? And
Mm-hmm.
asking those deeper questions where you can get answers to them, because I think that's the most
Yes.
terrifying part, when you ask those questions and you're
Mm-hmm.
not really seeing answers, and you're wondering, like, well, where should I go and what should I do? So it's easier
Yeah.
to numb out because you're afraid that there's probably not going to be an answer for you. And that's just a lie. There are answers,
Yes.
and there are going to be answers for your health as much as for your mental health, for your emotional health,
Right.
and to see those pieces working together again.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what do you think as
Yeah.
far as peaceful living relationships to our periods? We're talking a little bit about this, how it impacts other aspects of our health, but have
Mm-hmm.
you seen specific examples with women that you're working with, or just in the research that you're doing, where you're
Mm-hmm.
seeing I guess, a pretty direct correlation and saying, wow, women are super negative around their periods and their bodies. And this is coming out sideways in, body
Mhm.
image or in how they're
Mhm.
responding in relationships with men. And
Yes.
just in the examples, you were starting to give those, but just I want to like
Mhm.
pick at that a little bit more.
Yes. Yeah. And really, I also love the book, The Fifth Vital Sign by Lisa Hendrickson Jack, because she gets at the heart of that is not only like, yes, emotionally, right? But physically, if we are not having optimal hormones, that doesn't mean perfect by any means, it's just healthy
Yeah.
hormonal functioning, right? Um, Ovulation is the fifth vital sign for women. So that means heart health, bone health, I mean, everything is connected to, do you have healthy hormones? All of it. Our whole womanhood health, right? Our whole women's healthcare is connected to, do we have healthy ovulation and healthy cycles? And when we don't, it's a canary in the coal mine, because it's saying my body needs help. It's not in the right balance. And so it's giving us that first sign. And it's so fascinating. And I want to touch on the emotional thing too, but it is fascinating to watch women's cycles shift
Mm-hmm.
when they have stress, when they actually are eating much healthier or exercising. Somebody does Whole30, right? That's pretty extreme, but it is astounding to watch the cycle be the gauge of, is this right for my body? Because there are people who, different people on different sides of intermittent fasting, right? I think I'm not an expert in that by any means, but the fascinating thing is, you see a woman trying to do intermittent fasting and her cycle goes whack. Okay, that is not right for her in the way she's doing it, at least. Now, I've been doing it lately just for my own health, kind of figuring out what's causing my gut issues, and my cycle's now tightening up in a good way. Okay, so my body actually, that is a good thing for me. My cycle is showing me these things are good and helpful to my body, right? It's giving us kind of like first line diagnostics, right? It's like seeing, if I try this, how does my cycle react? Now, none of that is like necessarily like, if you travel, okay, your cycle can get messed up, but that's a temporary thing. But then on the emotional side of that, a mental emotional side, I mean, I know just for myself how much PMS affected my husband and I. I was kind of crazy for like 2 weeks. So I did ovulation and post, we call it post peak phase, but the luteal phase, I would just be super irritable and I couldn't honestly control it. My hormones, I could to the best of my ability, right? But I remember actually getting the hormonal, or we figured out more of the hormonal balance. And I remember telling my husband, wow, I'm sorry. I see now. I see now how I was and how I am now. And he's like, I love you, honey. But that made me feel so much more insecure in the hormonal problem areas, right? It makes me, and then that would affect our relationship, because he was like, man, I see you're having a hard time, but you're kind of thinking some crazy things there. I'm not sure what to do. I'll do the best I can. But how much do we, you think about how it affects like the areas of our lives. Okay. If, how does it affect our kids and our families, how we talk to them and approach them? How does it affect of course, our intimacy we just talked about? If
Mm-hmm.
you don't feel good about yourself, you're not going to want to be intimate with your husband as much, right? Because you're going to feel negative, like, well, I'm having a rough PMS, and even if you don't understand it, you don't know why it's happening per se. It's harder to connect with someone, with your husband emotionally. Talk about friendships. You're going to feel like your friends don't like you, but really it's just where you are. They don't not like you. Maybe they're busy, right? Our perception of things shifts so much when our either our hormones are out of whack and we need help, or we just feel like, you know, I mean, we're so interconnected. We can't just say, oh, that's my period and it's annoying and I can't stand it and it's over there and I'm just going to stick it in a box, because it affects everything. How do you show up in life when you feel like you're having a horrible period and then no one understands and I can't get any help? Like, that's demoralizing. Like, if
Mm-hmm.
you just have to deal with it, right? Um, So yeah, I mean, it affects, and then this has been the fascinating thing. I did not struggle with acne, like hormonal acne, but women who do, it is like scarring to your self-esteem. And I had a client recently who got on some bioidentical progesterone, and for the first time in her life, she's like, my skin it's clear, and she's a beautiful girl. I mean, she's stunning. She knows how to use makeup to kind of cover up stuff when it's not, but it just, her self-esteem took such a hit. It was such frustration for her. And look at that, hormonal balance, getting back to hormonal balance, her skin cleared up. The skin again was a sign something was off. Our bodies are trying to tell us things, and we just have to learn how to listen and understand, instead of saying, that's irritating, how do I get rid of this? Well, maybe let's look at those as signs, just like the fifth vital sign. What signs is your body giving you? Could be I need help, or could be this is a normal process. That, can we have patience in that and to learn from it, versus just shaming or blaming or trying to get rid of it or something.
You make such great points, and you're getting me thinking about specifically with the body positivity movement and the connection that needs to be made to period positivity with that movement. Yes. Because I just see, again, it's a good movement, but it's that disassociation again, just in everything that you're saying. I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, we have these different movements, but this seems to be one that has really taken off and sticking, and I think in the same way that period positivity is growing and we're having more honest conversations about our bodies as women. But again, how do you see that connecting, or opportunities to connect those together? Maybe I guess in like a practical sense, and just as a way for someone who's, really on board with the body positivity movement, or has seen such positive impact in her own life through that, and through the language that comes from that. I mean, we can't forget our periods. We can't forget these other aspects of our health.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's so important, because we're so connected. And are you having bloating and weight gain because your hormones are off? And are you having, are you viewing yourself negatively because it's right before your period? Like that, it all comes into focus when we view it through the lens of our natural cycles. Like we have natural cycles that has a possibility to bear life. If you shut that off, because there's negative consequences that come with, like the pill or anything else, there's so much, mental, but physical, you're shutting down a system that is a natural system. Why don't we work with it and actually say, my body is awesome, even as I am working through my hormonal fluctuations. And my fertility is amazing. And I'm going to find help, because I now see and understand that my body needs help. Right. And it's knowing, it's like twofold. It's knowing I love my body, and I see and acknowledge that it needs some help in getting back to optimal balance. And so I'm going to honor my body by finding that.
I like that a lot. That's really great. Everything that you're saying is really great. I'm just like, keep going, Sarah. Just keep going.
But even like you think about like all the exercise, right? And we all want to do exercise and build these amazing habits. But we've got to take into account, Megan Fowler with the Aligned Cycle is amazing with this, and connecting our work to our cycles. And we have certain times that are more productive, and certain times that are more, we got to keep it close to the vest, right? And take that time to rest and recoup, and don't shove, like try to force. Again, we're kind of living a man's world, and yeah, it's not a bad thing, but we've got to take our own amazing, gentle, beautiful, strong power back and say, yep, we're not constant. That isn't the way we work. Actually, we work in waves. And sometimes the waves are crazy, and we need a little help, like making it a little calmer, but we work in natural waves, and that's okay. And to then apply that to everything. Like, what about your exercise? Well, you're not going to feel like exercising a whole lot right before your period starts. It's just, that is natural. But to take a walk is outstanding for your period health, because it keeps you moving. It pelvic floor health, right? All these things, getting yourself going and moving is a huge piece of not only your mental health, but keeping your your whole, you don't cramp as much when when you get movement in. So allowing ourselves that grace to understand we work in gentle waves. And if waves get too sharp and rough, then to know who and where to get help, authentic help, to help bring our bodies back into balance.
I really like that. It's making me think of, well, I did a couple of interviews around cycle syncing, and then with the Align Cycle with Megan, talking about, basically syncing your cycle to your work too. And just all these different aspects that you're talking about that are so helpful for us to understand. And I think especially what you said, that we work more in waves as women and that it's okay. We have this really weird competitive mindset that is so wired into us that we have to be a constant, especially hormonally, and just aggressive and keep going and fighting. And it's like, we're not doing ourselves any favors by fighting our body and by fighting our hormones. And there's nothing wrong in leaning into them. That doesn't make us weak. It actually is going to help us be strong, to optimize our work schedule, to optimize our workouts, and impacting our relationships and how our relationship with ourselves. And I think we don't realize that as women, especially when we're first learning. I think with fertility awareness, especially when we don't have that grounding and that understanding, if we have no knowledge of our cycles and our bodies, we don't even see these connection points. I didn't realize that I could, with workouts until a couple of years ago. I was like, wait, cycle syncing, what is that? As I started working with managing fertility, I was like, that's a thing. That wasn't talked about in cross country. That wasn't talked about. I mean, I wasn't a big athlete, but I didn't see it blogged about. I didn't see it talked about in different, fitness magazines or books. I mean, it was all around pushing yourself, lifting more, and you can lift heavy. And it's like, okay, yeah, all those things are true, but what about working with my body and the way it works? But I think probably with so many being on birth control and at different points in time being on hormonal birth control specifically, um how can you have a conversation around that? Because you have synthetic hormones in your body, and that's impacting how you're working and how you're operating. And I mean, isn't ultimately like the goal with hormonal birth control? I mean, I know there are aspects to say, oh, it's supposed to help your health, it's supposed to help your period pain, it's supposed to do all these things, but really ultimately it's to shut you down, to make you more like a man. I mean, isn't that ultimately what it's doing? Because it just seems, and the more and more I interview with people and talk with different people, it's just like neutering who we are and helping us to be exactly like men so we can rise to the top and be CEOs. Why should I have to turn off parts of my body that are functioning, even if they have blips, even if it's unhealthy, even if there are areas that need to be worked on? Why should I turn off my body to be a CEO? Why can't I have a period and be a CEO?
Exactly. And work with your cycles to be even more effective at certain things than a man, right? And again, any woman could do anything. Then you have to look at, is that where she is really called? Or is she forcing it because she's supposed to or feels that she should, blah, blah, right? Or all those things. Any woman could do anything. But are you called there? Because when you're called and designed to be in a certain place, you will thrive when you know this information. That's where superpower comes from. You can be an amazing CEO and you don't have to be aggressive. I mean, I'm not one, so I'm not an expert. But at the same time, but there'd be a fascinating study, like how many CEOs, and no offense to the women, but how many of them are on birth control? Because that's how they feel they have to roll. And maybe there aren't. And I think that's beautiful. If there's some who are naturally working with their cycles, that's awesome. That's a true superpower then, because they found their calling and they've made it work. And I had an amazing professor in engineering school, and she's like the dean of engineering now. And she's an amazing mom, an amazing, amazing professor, and amazing dean. And she worked in her genius. She loves what she does. She loves her family. She always made time for them. And so she made that work. And I always think of, all these great examples of women who, like Leah Dara, right? Or Canning or January Donovan, all these women who are living their motherhood and their womanhood, whether or not you have children, is, you living your authentic womanhood because you understand at the core how amazing our fertility, our reproductive, our actual, that is a massive piece of our authentic womanhood.
Yeah, absolutely. And what you said about calling and
Mm-hmm.
then actually understanding how our bodies work and just having those live in harmony. Because that's a huge point.
Yes.
It's just like,
Yes.
why, for some, I mean, it ties in with our cycles and using hormonal birth
Mm-hmm.
control and figuring out like, are you choosing to be on hormonal contraception in part due to where you want to go and where you want to be in your career? And it begs the question, well, can you do both? Are you meant to do both? Are you
Right.
called? And when I say both, I really mean, you know, are you called to be in the space that you feel
Mm-hmm.
called to in work, and that if that's a passion, and if so, why not, like you're saying, lean into how you're created and maximize your
Mm-hmm.
superpower with your fertility and your
Yes.
reproductive health instead of shutting it down? Because if you're trying to shut it down
Mm-hmm.
to move forward in your career, there's something wrong here. You shouldn't be
Right.
shutting off a part of who you are to make
Yes.
progress. And I
Yes.
know there's layers there. And yes, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, we can have a whole separate episode on that for sure. But I think just to start thinking about that,
Yeah.
that's where the work begins.
Yes.
Yes, of course, there are, courses and majors in, feminist theory and talking about these different topics. But really, I think at the heart of it, just stopping and reflecting on like, why are you going on the path that you're on? And I think you mentioned some really great resources with Lisa Canning and January Donovan.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing coaching with women. January has the women's school. Like, if you are needing these spaces to continue growing and continue learning about yourself, do the
Mm-hmm.
work. It's so
Mm-hmm.
important. I know these are like the plugs I'm giving. They're not sponsoring us. There's nothing that way, but I just really love them.
Uh-huh.
And I think
Yep.
those, just to actually have, and I can link to everything that we're talking about in the show notes,
Yeah.
just to different resources to really help you start to hone in and
Mm-hmm.
get at, who who am I? Who am I created to be? How does my body work? And how, if there's healing that needs to be done with your body, with other areas of your life, like, it's good to do that work. And it's
Yes.
connected, like you were saying, throughout
Yes.
this, just how interconnected we are, and that it's good that we're interconnected. It helps make more
Yes.
sense for
Right.
us, in that daily living when you're like, why doesn't this work? It's like, wait a minute, hold on. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
there probably is an explanation for something, and how good that is, instead of feeling like, oh my
Mm-hmm.
gosh, there aren't any answers. I'm just a hot mess,
Mm-hmm.
and how often we
Yeah.
might tell ourselves that.
Right. And that's a huge piece of you have to think about how do you know, I would have said prior to more of like all the work I did with the women's school and I'm doing now, my self-worth was okay, right? I know I'm worth a lot in God's eyes and I know I'm worthy of things, but my self-image, and there's a distinction between the two, my self-image was in the tank. Because the way I viewed myself was very negative. I can't do this. Oh, I don't. Well, that's all skills. And that's again, all of the stuff we're talking about too. These are mindset skills. These are all pieces of, we don't have to attach our self-worth to what we can or cannot do or what our bodies can or cannot do or what's happening. We need to see and be aware of where do we need to break apart our self-worth from things that are just skills we need to learn. We don't have to feel inadequate because we're struggling with infertility. And believe me, I lived that. We don't have to feel inadequate because we have messed up cycles and these other girls are having no issues whatsoever. That's a medical issue. Like, that's finding a doctor who can help you. That's not a self-worth issue. And that's what I found. So you said that so well, that those two are so intertwined that we need to understand at the core, we are amazingly designed, and we were not designed to like need a piece taken out or to be feeling inadequate because something's not working right or we don't have those skills. There's always a place we can find a skill to work on. So if we're feeling inadequate, that's another big piece of this, is if you're feeling inadequate, what skill are we missing? That's a big thing I coach with a women's school and help women strategize on. And then the other piece is, if your body needs help, find that authentic healthcare, right? Restorative reproductive medicine, naprotechnology, reaching out, finding a fertility awareness instructor. There are we can have help for our bodies when things are off, when your mindset is just so down about whatever it is. There's always a solution somewhere. Doesn't mean it's not hard work or it may take time, right? There's all those pieces to it, but we don't have to feel inadequate because our periods are bad. We don't have to feel horrible about them. We need to know we can find help, and women need to know that there is help. There's authentic healthcare that they can find and get help. And at the same time, they don't need to attach their worth to a cycle that doesn't work, or the fact that they aren't getting pregnant when they're percent doing all the right things, or right. It's coming out of that and seeing that bigger picture of we are amazing, and our authentic womanhood has so many aspects that are all intertwined, and that is it's our superpower, and it's okay and amazing to see it as such. Doesn't make us better than others. It just means we can live authentically as a woman in the beautiful design we are made.
That's so good, Sarah. Oh, that's great. And just the practicals that you've thrown in there too, and just and and talking about skills, because I think that's something that we often, we don't know where to go next. It's like, okay, I want to make changes, then what do I do? And I think pointing out, it's there are answers, there is hope, and it's figuring out, okay, what skills what skills do I need to build? What are the skills I'm missing that would really help me to step into my feminine genius, to love my body more. And I liked how you distinguish that with self-worth and self-image, because even for myself, I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. And I'm going through the women's school right now, and it's just so many moments. It's like the layers of an onion where you're pulling back, you keep learning, you're rewiring, and you're thinking, okay, I'm shifting my mindset on this, and you're uncovering things about yourself that it's so good to do. So we're coming to the end of this episode, but I have to ask you, what's one recommendation you have for someone who's listening and thinking, wow, I really hate my period. There are issues here that I have, or I'm struggling, and I'm resonating with so much of what you're saying. How can I start to love my body and appreciate my period? How do I start the journey of integration?
Yes. Oh, it's a great way to say it. So a couple of things, but I think the one thing that I am doing in the next month or so, I am putting together a challenge. I have a challenge all about this. How do we bring these things together? How do we have a peaceful period and a peaceful mindset around all of these things, like everything we've been talking about? So definitely connect. We'll have the link through the show notes, and then also my website, familywellnessinspired.com. So you can definitely connect with me. Follow me on Instagram. I'm going to be talking a lot about this in the next couple months for sure, and beyond. This is a passion of mine. So if you have questions, you can always message me through Instagram, or connect with me through my site. I've always open to questions, and really, you have to think of what's the tiny next step. If you're having massive period issues, connect with me. You've got all the resources, Bridget, but find a restorative reproductive health doctor who can help you. If you've got debilitating periods, that is step one. Find a doctor who can help you. We need to figure out the physical side first. Then it's connect with me. Look at be part of the challenge. This is, how do we bring back our authentic womanhood and understand you can have a peaceful period? I'm going to be teaching different period hacks as well. And then also bring all this mindset back into, this is authentic womanhood. We can have peaceful periods, peaceful life, and these are the pieces and how we can do that.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. And I'm really excited for your challenge coming up. This is going to be so great.
Yes.
And just exactly what we need. So it's perfect. I think just talking about all this, it's like, okay, here are different resources, and here's something super tangible and coming up that you can do as your easy next step. It's like that easy sign up, because why not? And hearing all this, I'm just like, okay, well, I'm ready. Sign me up. Let's go.
I love
Let's do it. So I'm really glad that you were able to join me today. I love talking with you. Your passion is so evident as you are sharing, and just the passion that you have for helping women to really live whole and full lives, and really on that journey of integration and figuring out, okay, where am I called to step into my feminine genius? How am I called to love those around me by first loving myself and recognizing, love what you say, fertility is a gift and a superpower. Like we never hear that, it's very
Mm-hmm.
rare that we hear that in the fertility awareness spaces. Yeah, I mean, we hear that more and more, but really just to say it so, loudly and clearly as a reminder for ourselves that, I think that script that we
Mm-hmm.
need to say every day to remember that
Yes.
it is such a gift and it's so good. So Sarah,
Mm-hmm.
thank you for being on. I'm going to be linking
Thank
to
you.
Sarah's website, and when her challenge is live, that link will be up there, and everything else that we've discussed, I'll be sharing that in the show notes. Thank you so much for all the work that you're doing, and grateful to talk with you today.
Oh, thank you, Bridget. It was amazing. I love it.
Thank you so much for listening. Please subscribe, share with your friends, and help expand the conversation around women's health. If you'd like to learn more about fertility awareness, visit www.managingyourfertility.com for more information, resources, guides, and so much more.